Now to a story that you'll be familiar with. Paula Venables, who's former chief executive of the Post Office, will speak for the first time as the inquiry into the Horizon IT scandal continues this week.
It will be the first time that Venables has spoken publicly about the scandal since she was questioned by a committee of MPs nearly a decade ago. Well, she's expected to give evidence over the course of 3 days about her role as head of the Post Office during the last few years of the scandal.
Ms Venables' Post Office career began in 2007 when she joined as a group network director. She was promoted to chief executive in 2012 and stepped down from the role in 2019. The same year, she was made a CBE for her services.
Well, in January this year, Venables handed back her CBE following calls from Sub-Postmasters to return the honour. More than 900 Sub-Postmasters were prosecuted between 1999 and 2015. But to date, only 103 convictions have been overturned. One of those still waiting is former Sub-Postmaster Keith Bell, who's with us this morning. Keith, morning to you.
Morning, Keith.
We were just discussing the impact of this scandal. It's easy to get caught up in all these big headlines, isn't it? And more evidence from Paula Venables than due this week. But it's about all the individual stories and what this scandal's meant for people. Just tell us a little bit about what happened to you.
I was convicted back in 2002. I was initially suspended from my post office. At that point, you're actually locked out. So I was never allowed back into that office. I lost all sorts of personal things and everything. Eventually, the bank repossessed because I was not paying my mortgage. I became bankrupt. I had no work. Luckily, thanks to the support of family, I was able to retrain and became a driving instructor. And I worked for BSM for about a year. And then the DVLA decided that because I had a conviction, they took away my driving license. So I then went back to square one again. The only work I could find then was minimum wage, warehousing and that sort of thing, which I did till after I retired, after retirement age. I never even watched the series when it first came out. I couldn't. And then one evening, late at night, I decided to watch it on catch-up, and I ended up watching it all the way through. And it was at that point I decided I needed to become part of what was going on.
What was it like watching that? Did you see your life?
It was unreal. The stories, although individual, are all very similar. Yeah? We were all told we were the only one. That keeps recurring over and over again. But life becomes very strange. I was very lucky. I have an amazing friends. And I managed to keep going.
And that support must have been invaluable to you.
Absolutely.
And so many others in your position. But like many others, you have had to carry this burden for decades. How have you been able to cope with that?
Frustrating. You put it to the back of your mind and you just try to get on with it on a daily basis. The frustrating thing is eventually you start doubting yourself, although you can't find a reason for it. The frustration is you can't support your family the way you'd like to, and your whole life is just a mess, if you like. But you've got to get on with it. I mean, I have been watching the inquiry basically every day. You get upset, you become angry and frustrated. The people being questioned, they know now that the facts are there, that what they did was wrong, the way they deceived and withheld information was wrong. And then they carried on and spent something like £100 million carrying on convicting people when they knew it was wrong. Yeah?
And although it must have been, as you say, quite difficult watching the inquiry, has it helped give any closure in a way, or has it helped in terms of vindication?
It makes things better that we can talk, as we're talking now. And although friends have never talked about it, we can now talk about it. But as I sit here today, nothing's changed until the legislation goes through Parliament nothing has changed.
Yeah, as we said, you're still waiting for your conviction to be able to,
Yes.
still waiting for some sort of compensation. I suppose there's two bits to my next question. What do you want to hear from Paula Venables on Wednesday? It's 3 days of testimony. And I suppose, what do you want this inquiry to ultimately do?
She has to admit to what happened and not hide behind the answers that just mask things on. And ultimately, I suppose, I want these people to be held accountable for what they did. If they've proven to be in the wrong and have done the things they've done, they must be held accountable for it.
Do you think that will happen?
I hope so. I hope so. I think there's enough feeling that it will happen. How long it'll take, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's been such a long wait so far. In terms of compensation, how do you feel about the way that has been handled so far? Of course, people are still waiting, but there is talk of that happening. There is talk of action now, isn't there, by the government?
There is, and I have spoken very briefly to the Minister, Kevin Holnake, who I believe is doing as good a job as he possibly can. He'll have his hands tied, he'll have protocol to go through. How they arrive at these figures is unreal. I mean, at my age, what they're offering is okay. But if I was 20 years younger, it might not be the same case. Yeah?
But it's not about the money either.
Not really. It's important, but I mean, how you arrive at these figures, I don't know.
Because nothing will undo what you've been through, the effect on your finances, your home, your job prospects.
My life. Yeah. We're so lucky to have had the likes of Alan Bates and the people that supported him. This would never have happened without him. And the lady who wrote the story did an amazing job. Yeah. And the follow-up, and I think the public support has been fantastic. We more or less sort of created a situation where they have to do something about it. Yeah.
Here's hoping. And it'd be interesting to hear that evidence when it this week. Keith, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming in.
We'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
But really nice to see you. Thank you for coming in this morning.